What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today is the Game Week 3 preview. So I'm going through your questions, your topics that you've put to me, all the news, talking points, that kind of thing, as well as captaincy. No fancy long intro today. Hit that like button if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you're new around here, and let's jump into the topics. Okay, so we're going to start off with hits and wildcards. We probably talked about this last week. It'll probably come up again next week. I might not start off with it as the first thing we talk about next week. But obviously, it's a big thing right now because there's a lot of price drops. People are trying to avoid that. There's a lot of mistakes we've made with our squad, so it's trying to rectify that with hits as well. And obviously, at this stage of the season is when most people have got their wild card, right? And not many people have used it between Game Week 1 and 2. There would have been quite a few, but a big percentage will still have it. And the same that haven't already hit it. Like, I've not hit mine yet. Maybe I will in the next coming weeks. And I kind of said that this would happen pre-season because everyone had Man United player booked in as a transfer for Game Week 2. Everyone had a Man City player transfer booked in for Game Week 3. And I did say there would be other players that we would want to have. It happens every single season. There's certain things that crop up. James Rodriguez suddenly well, not suddenly, but he still looks like a world beater. Everyone wants him in. Calvert-Lewin scored 4 goals in 2. Everybody wants to try and get him in. Son's just scored 4 goals. Everybody wants to get him in. These things happen at the start of the season. And so everyone said pre-season, that's fine. If that happens, I'll just use a hit. Well, now they have to take the hit. They're questioning it all the time. And people seem to want like a blanket answer of when to take a hit and when to take a wild card. Let's take the hit situation first. There is no blanket situation where this 100% you should take a hit, this 100% you shouldn't, right? So one popular transfer this week is sent Maximin to Podence. So I'm going to talk about Podence in particular later on. But this is a transfer a lot of people are going to make, right? So in one scenario, let's say you're playing 3-4-3, St. Maximin is someone you have to play every week, and on your bench you've either got a non-playing bench, in which case yes, I would take the hit, or maybe you've got like Basuma or basically a £4.5 million midfielder that's actually going to play this week. Maybe it's Reed for Fulham or something like that. In that scenario, would I take a hit? I probably would, because I wouldn't want to have that £4.5 million playing midfielder. If I had a £4.5 million defender, I don't know, like an Ayling for Leeds or someone that I was going to bench, then maybe I would play them instead. To give you an example from my own team, I have Luke Shaw, who I can play this week, instead of taking a hit for St. Maximin. So he's playing Brighton away. Will they 100% get a clean sheet? I don't know if I'm that confident after the first game, but if Matic and Wan-Bissaka are back, then yeah, maybe it could happen. So if he gets a clean sheet, that's 6 points. Maybe he gets a yellow card, but I'm not going to factor that in right now. 6 points. The 4 point for the hit, that's 10 points straight away that Podence will have to get in that week. Whereas I could just get him the week after. Now, there's other things that come into you have to factor in. Like probably St. Maximin will probably drop at some point this week in price. And Podence could go up. He's still actually very low owned, by the way. He looks like a big kind of thing in terms of Twitter and YouTube communities. But he's not actually been transferred in by that many people. Like his ownership's still around 3%. But he could go up in price as well. So I could lose 0.2 million. And sometimes I will take a hit to avoid a price drop like I did last week. But that was for 2 players that weren't going to play, Vinagre and Pulisic. The whole Vinagre situation has changed a bit, but I didn't know that at the time. So I took a hit to avoid price drops and to bring in 2 players that I thought were going to rise in price. With St. Max and Podence, I could still do it, but it's to do it to not play Luke Shaw. So I probably will just play Shaw and hope for the best. I can still get Podence in the week after. Like, at the end of the day, I'll have to pay 0.2 million more for the pleasure, but if he's that good an option, he's still worth 5.6 million. And if I've lost the money on St. Maximin, so be it. Another example is Che Adams, right? Again, we're going to talk about him later on when we talk about under and over performance. He's someone I want to keep. So just because he's dropping in price does not mean I'm going to take a hit to get rid of him, because I still think he looks good for the next couple of weeks. So there is no blanket answer. The question is, how many points is the player you're going to taken out going to score, and how many is the player you're bringing in going to score? Yes, it matters over the next 4 to 5 game weeks, but you still want to make sure you try and get those points back this week as well. And more importantly, if the player is injured for a short amount of time, or maybe you don't want them, but you could take them out for free the next week, who is your replacement on the bench to play instead? If it's someone that's got a good fixture that you could see getting points, there's probably no absolute need to take the hit. If that price change that's going to happen, like if St. Max is going to go down and Podence is going to go up, if that really affects long-term transfers, then yeah, maybe you do take the hit. But I don't think you need to do it in every situation. So yes, that's kind of that's not really a sitting on the fence answer. There literally is just so many different situations when you might want to take a hit or not. If I had Basuma coming off my bench this week and not Luke Shaw, I appreciate Luke Basuma's suspended, but let's say it's Reed again from Fulham, then yeah, I probably would take the hit. In terms of wildcard, I'm going to do a wildcard video tomorrow, so I'm not going to answer too many questions about who should 100% be in a wildcard and stuff like that. I'm going to put a draft together and do a separate video on it. again, it's a question of at what situation do I wildcard? Now, again, there's no blanket answer. So I'm looking at my team, right? Here's one thing I would do at this stage of the season. Put together your own wildcard draft that you would want to switch to, and then see how many players you actually switch. And also, in some situations, you will take out players that you think you want to change, but how bad is that player you're taking out? Like, for example, right, I could do a wildcard squad now and put Jesus in instead of Werner, and I could say, well, that's an extra player that I want to change. But realistically, Werner is not a player that needs to be wildcarded out this week with West Brom away. So there's a lot of things to take into account with wildcard. I think if you have like 3 non-playing players on the bench for a week, then that's annoying. But for me, that's not a reason to wildcard if you've got a good playing 11. If you have like 3 or 4 of your main 11 not playing, then that's perhaps a little bit different. Maybe you should start thinking of wildcarding. And by the way, it shouldn't always be about players you're taking out, how bad they are. There may also be times that you want to jump on a really good set of players. Like this week, for example, you could get in Podence, Jimenez, Jesus, Sterling and De Bruyne if you wanted to triple up on Man City attack, double up on Man City attack. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing to do, but if you wanted to do that, a wildcard's a very quick and easy way to do it. You get in ahead of the curve. Most people are just going to have one Man City player, for example, this week, perhaps one Wolves attacker, if any. And so you can get ahead of the game that way. So there's lots of different reasons why you would wildcard, right? It can be to bring in players you think are going to do really well, or just take out players that you think are really bad. Most teams that I've seen, I don't think they necessarily need a wildcard. But again, I say this every year, you're not going to be in a position where you absolutely 100% need a wildcard most weeks, because you're going to use transfers to manage your team, right? That's the whole point of FPL, is to manage those bad players to put in better players. So you're never going to be in a situation where 7, 8 players need changing. Not most of the time. Some of you will be because you have made a squad you're really not happy with. But for most weeks, that's not going to happen. So don't let it get to a point where you think you need 8 or 9 players to change. Sometimes it can just be 3 or 4 key players plus a few of the periphery players, like, you know, bench options, cheap goalkeeper and stuff like that as well. So again, blanket answer, but yeah, there's lots of things to consider. Set Maximin replacement. So I just talked about him. I do like Podence, whether it's for a hit or not. Again, it depends on the hit situation. I've just talked about that. I'm not going to go through it again. But he seems the number one. The only thing I would say is we don't 100% know his minutes are guaranteed every single week. So they've just signed Semedo. That's now been official, or made official. So the thinking is he comes in at right wing back. Traore gets pushed forward. They continue playing 3-4-3. There's only one space on the left for Podence or Neto. It seems to be that Podence is first choice right now, but at some point Neto could come in and start a game. Maybe if Podence needs a rest, he could come on at 60, 70 minutes to give Podence a bit of time off as well. There's no guarantee he's suddenly an 80 to 90 minute man, but on the flip side, for 5.5 million with those incredible fixtures Wolves have, he probably would be my number one target. Other options, Traore. I mean, I have seen some talk about Semedo playing left wing back and Traore continuing right wing back, but I just don't see that happening. I think Semedo's going to go in at right wing back and let Traore push forward, because I think he's such a good option for Wolves going forward. So for me, Traore gets pushed up, so he now could be an option. He's not really a differential, to be honest. He's owned by like 15% of the community already, so it's pretty big considering I haven't seen him in hardly any teams. But 6.5 million, he could be a nice option if you wanted to go up a little bit more in money. It depends how much you got in the bank. And Foden as well, if you want to take a bit of a risk. Obviously, can't guarantee his minutes either, but he can be explosive when he plays. Again, I'm going to talk about Man City players in a minute. Click is someone from Leeds. If there's going to be a huge amount more penalties this year, which I'm still not convinced is going to be the case, there could be a few more, but how many more it is, we don't know. And which teams get them as well, we're not going to know that either. So I think with Click, I don't think he's going to score many open play goals, so you really are relying on penalties, which is fine if they keep getting them, but if they don't, then suddenly he's a 5.5 million option, which isn't looking fantastic, especially when you can get the likes of Podence instead. So he is definitely the number one choice this week, and for good reason, really. I don't see too many reasons to not go for Podence, to be completely honest. So I got a few questions on Liverpool, what to do with Liverpool in general, what to do with Liverpool players on Wildcard. And honestly, I think this is one of the trickiest things about wildcarding this early. You're having to make huge decisions on players like Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I do think in a few weeks people might look to get rid of. But right now, I personally wouldn't want to go without him on wildcard, and I certainly wouldn't want to go without someone like Salah. Like, I look at the fixtures, Arsenal at home, Villa away, Everton away, Sheffield United at home, West Ham at home. I think you can make a case of captaining Salah in 4 of those next 5 fixtures. Now, there might be other options as well, right? Salah has Arsenal at home this week. You could go Werner against West Brom, Kane, Son against Newcastle, etc., etc. There's other options. but he is a decent option this week. And then Villa away. I don't buy all this. Salah can't do it away from home. It's Villa. I think that's a good option. Sheffield United at home, West Ham at home could be as well. Again, there probably are other options in some of those weeks. If you can make an argument to captain him, he's probably someone you want in your team, especially with the penalties, etc. So for me, I would want Salah. I would want Trent Alexander-Arnold. Would I want to double up on defence? I don't know if I would. Like, I've put together a few drafts already, and I'm already struggling to fit one defender in, let alone two. I do think Robertson's great, and I get the whole, you know, him versus a £7 million midfielder, etc., etc. But when let's say Reece James is nailed on at Chelsea, let's say they get Mendy in, for example, that's 2 million less, or 1.9 million less from Robertson to Reece James. What can that do for your midfield and the attack? It's never just, I've said this so many times, it's never just Robertson versus a 7 million midfielder. It's Robertson plus however much you've spent in midfield, or the £7 million midfielder plus however much you spent in defence. So a £5 million defender plus an £8 million midfielder versus a £7 million defender and like what, a £6 million midfielder. That's very close at that point. So I don't know if I would want double defence. Again, though, if you're doing it, no reason not to really, because the fixtures are so good. Again, Villa, Everton, Sheffield United, West Ham. How many clean sheets there? 2 or 3 potentially in the next 5. I don't think you could be too worried about that. With the attack, again, really only looking at Salah or Mane. I probably would only have one. I think Man City offer, you can get players in who can score just as high for a little bit less money. I don't know if I'd want both Salah or Mane. Big differential to have both, of course. But I would rather have Salah or Mane, depending on which one you want. My preference is Salah, you know that, plus one of the Man City players instead. So I don't think we certainly shouldn't be writing Liverpool off and getting rid of them on Wildcard. It's a very big decision, but I don't know if I would be doing it right now. And then how many Man City players, what to do about Man City. The whole De Bruyne versus Sterling thing, I think it's very hard to judge after one game versus Wolves. What I will say is they looked incredible. None of this kind of Man United trying to get up to speed type thing. They were on it from the get-go, basically, against Wolves. They were brilliant. The thing is, De Bruyne has got penalties because Aguero's out. We kind of knew he was going to probably take them anyway, but with Aguero out, he's definitely taken them. He's just scored another one as well. And I think it was already close between De Bruyne and Sterling. Like, Sterling probably is going to score more goals from open play. We kind of know that, right? But with De Bruyne with penalties, just makes him such a huge option. So he is my preference between the two. If you wanted to double up, don't see a massive issue. Elsewhere, same old story with the attackers, right? They're going to get rotated. The thing with Foden is a lot of people thought when David Silva left that he might get like a central midfield position. That hasn't really, well, it hasn't happened in the first game at least, right? He's played on the right instead of Mahrez. So straight away, if that's where Pep sees his position, then Mahrez can rotate in there. Bernardo Silva can play there. Bernardo Silva and Gundogan can play in the centre instead of one of the holding midfielders instead. So suddenly, if Foden not playing that David Silva role and playing wide, he's got a lot of competition there. So 6.5 million could still be a good option because he is going to get big hauls, but he's also then going to get benched and maybe come on for like 1 point cameos and stuff like that as well. So you've got to be prepared for that. You've got to have a good bench. And it's the risk you take. Mahrez and Foden will score good points this year. It's just a case of when will it happen. It's very hard to know who's going to start. Mahrez didn't start the last game. We'll have to see what happens in the Carabao Cup. And you know, maybe Mahrez starts there and Foden starts again in the league. But long term, Foden's not going to start every single week on that right-hand side. And you're kidding yourself if you think that is the case. So you've got to be prepared for that benching. In defence, Ake started. I think he did okay. Didn't really have a lot to do, to be honest. And what he had to do, he did fine. Laporte will obviously come back in that position. It just depends whether Pep ends up playing 2 left-footed centre-backs, so Ake and Laporte. So right now, I wouldn't want to go there. I think defensively, Man City are going to get plenty of clean sheets. But again, there's too much rotation there. Laporte's injured right now, or at least he was out the first game, sorry. And when he's back, he probably will be pretty much nailed on. But he's 6 million. I don't know if I'd want to go there right away. But they do have pretty good fixtures. I just think you can maybe get as attacking, if not more attacking players for less money, which is what put me off. So I think one of De Bruyne or Sterling. De Bruyne is my personal favourite. Mahrez or Foden if you want to take a bit of risk of rotation. And Jesus should be pretty much nailed until Aguero is back. Now, how long that is, we don't know. Now it's gone down to it could be back in a month. And once you take into account international break and stuff, then suddenly that month turns into maybe 3 matches for Jesus. But for a good short-term option at 9.5 million, I still like him. He's still going to get plenty of chances, and he is pretty much going to be nailed on. Should I get rid of Man United players? So good last year. I bought them in for 1 game week. They blanked, and now I need to get rid of them. there is an incredible amount of knee-jerking going on. And someone asked me on a stream the other day what a knee-jerk decision, or what knee-jerk meant, basically. And I give a really bad explanation and said, it's when you make a knee-jerk decision, which obviously doesn't help it at all. Like, what is a knee-jerk decision? So most people will know, but basically it's when you kind of make a decision off very limited data, or you make the decision extremely quickly based on something bad or good that's happened. So an example is Man United players. Son in Game Week 1, well, I swap him to Rashford in Game Week 2 because I really need him in my team. Rashford blank, Son scores 4 goals, bam, knee-jerk decision, I need to swap that. That's like one of the examples. And it happens a lot at the start of the season. So, look, Man United were poor against Crystal Palace. I do think some of the I think Matic, right, so underrated for how well he played for us last year, especially in the second half of the season. We need someone like him in. I just don't see Pogba, Van der Beek and Bruno Fernandes playing together unless we change formation, and I don't see that happening. So we could see Greenwood, Matic and Wan-Bissaka come in for the next game, which will really help us out. So for me, I can see why people want to do the Rashford to Son switch back. The question you got to ask yourselves is, why did you do that move in the first place, right? We all knew Son had better fixtures. I do think, and I said this before Game Week 2, a lot of people were relying on that Crystal Palace game for Man United. Now they're looking at the fixtures thinking, oh, they're not actually that good. But Brighton away and Newcastle away in the next 3 is decent enough. But it is, I think it's Spurs, Arsenal and Chelsea, the other fixtures. So again, we knew that before. So what has changed apart from the fact Son has scored 4 goals? He's not going to do that again. He'll probably never do that again for the next 5 seasons. Not saying you shouldn't make that move, because Son does have better fixtures. But at some point, you've got to slow down this knee-jerking and stop making such rash decisions. Now, I've been there as well. I've been thinking about bringing in St. Maximin for Podence because I saw how well Podence played. To be fair, he didn't even score, and I still wanted to bring him in for a hit. So it's slightly different. So yeah, would I get rid of my Man United players? On a wildcard, I probably would, because I never would have wanted them in the first place. If I've got them in my team now, would I swap them back to other players? I'd probably like to give them another go. Like Rashford to Son, for example. Son's got a good fixture, but there's nothing to say he'll massively outscore Rashford against Brighton away. Rashford scored last night in the Carabao Cup. Greenwood scored as well. They looked pretty fresh when they came on. They're not going to be happy about that Crystal Palace game at all. And Brighton are a decent team, and I'm sure if Lamptey's fit and ready to go, he'll give Shaw a really good game down that right-hand side. But there's nothing to say Man United can't score a few goals in that game. So for me, I will keep them, then maybe reassess. Then you've had 2 games. See who plays. Are they up to full strength? Is it a normal choice first 11? And then see how you get on. I don't know if I would be swapping them back out. I can see why people want to do it. But Martial, for example, who are you going to? Jesus, maybe, okay. Back to Werner. I mean, I don't know. It's just knee-jerking to the extreme. And I would try and avoid it where possible. Like, there's nothing to say Man United can't beat Brighton. But on a wild card, would I have any? Probably not. But for the same reasons I said before, they're not 7.5, 8.5 million anymore. They're more expensive. It's difficult to get them in versus other premium options. And Bruno Fernandes for 10.5, like I said, without penalties, is he as good an option for that price? I don't think he is. So if you bought them in most situations, I would probably keep. If you wildcard in, yeah, okay, maybe I would probably take them out. Just to admit that it was maybe a mistake, potentially. I mean, the Brighton game could change that. And yeah, put other players in. I've not seen many wildcard drafts for Game Week 3 with Man United players in at all. Under overperforming players. So I talk about stats a little bit on this. I don't think my videos are completely full of stats, but I do pay attention to them, right? So under and overperforming players is a really interesting example. I got asked a few times about whether we should take out Che Adams and bring in Patrick Bamford. So I think this is the ultimate under and overperforming kind of transfer for this season so far, right? So let's talk about them both. Che Adams hasn't scored yet. He's got Burnley away and West Brom at home. Pretty decent next 2 fixtures. His non-penalty expected goals is 1.14. So for most players, basically, if they'd had the attempts or the chances that he's had, you'd have expected him to score at least 1 goal by now, but it hasn't done it. So he's underperforming his numbers. Does that mean he's definitely going to score in the next 2 games? Absolutely not, right? It can take a while for these things to kind of even out. But it does show that he is getting really good chances. He's not put them away. And I know a few people will comment saying he's just not a good finisher. Fair enough. Maybe he's not as clinical as Ings. But when you get the chances that he's getting, eventually he's going to put them away. He's not that bad where he's just never going to score again. So Burnley away and West Brom at home, I'm happy to have taken the price drop. I mean, obviously I'd rather that hadn't happened. But with those 2 fixtures, I think that's okay. Especially if Burnley are missing some of their centre-backs. And obviously West Brom at home is a decent fixture. And then you look at Bamford. People ask me, would I bring Bamford in? Well, okay, you save a bit of money. But he's got Sheffield United away. We still don't really know what to make of Sheffield United. Playing with 10 men against Villa, they did okay, but Villa's attack notoriously hasn't been that great anyway, so it's hard to know. That could be a tricky fixture. Man City at home, very tricky. Wolves at home, very tricky. That's the next 3 fixtures. He scored 2 goals from just 2 shots in the box from 0.14 non-penalty expected goals. So again, just because you have a low XG does not mean you're going to score, but it does usually mean you can't keep that up. So if he keeps getting those kind of quality of chances, he's not going to keep scoring. I know people will say, well, it was a one-on-one, it's easy to score, but these XG numbers, they're taking over thousands and thousands of shots. And so, yeah, maybe he would score that if he kept getting that exact same chance. But against the teams he's about to play, I'm not convinced. Even Bielsa said they're scoring virtually all the chances they create, but they're not creating enough chances. So even he knows they've overperformed a little bit. I think Leeds as a whole, their XG is like 1.69 or something. They scored 7 goals. That's not going to continue, especially against these teams. So would I do Che Adams to Bamford? No, I wouldn't. Maybe that will backfire for me. But I'm going to trust in the numbers and the fixtures and just go from there. So I want to talk about over-overperforming players a little bit. Wolves, great fixtures. I'm not going to go through them all, but it's like West Ham, then Fulham, and the good fixtures continue for like 5 game weeks. A few things to keep an eye on. So Semedo's in. I've already touched on that. Let's see his price. I'm almost guaranteeing it's 5.5 million. A few people hoping for 5. I just don't buy it. I think it'll be 5.5. By the time this video goes out, his price might already be up. But I think it'd be 5.5, and he could be a good option. His attacking numbers not quite on par with like Doherty from last year, but he's about to go from, I think he played right back mostly for Barcelona, and he's about to go into a right wing back position, we think, in a Wolves team that's very good defensively, and he's going to be given freedom to attack as well. So at 5.5 million, I really like him. If I was wildcarding, I'd strongly consider potentially him and Saiss as well, because the fixtures are that good. Obviously, the double up in defence stops any kind of double up in attack. I do like Jimenez, right? He's already scored 2 goals in 2. He's doing exactly what he does. He ticks over nicely. He doesn't get any massive hauls usually, but he will tick over. He will get the odd double-digit haul, like 10, 11, 12 points, whatever it might be. And he's the player you want. He's probably going to tick over to 200 points by the end of this season. And he's a great option for 8.5 million with the fixtures that they have. He's never going to be explosive. He's never going to be a player that I'm going to look to for captaincy, I don't think. But yeah, I really like the look of him. And Podence as well, again, is a good option. So it's difficult to know whether to go double attack or double defence. If I have a quick think about the players that I would want in my team, I feel like it might be easier to sacrifice one of the attackers to go double defence alongside a Liverpool player, potentially, if that's the strategy you want to go to. If you want to go 4 at the back, you could have 2 Wolves, Reece James and Trent, something like that. There's loads of options, and it's hard to sit here to say which one's best because it depends on the rest of the structure of your team. But Wolves are a team I'd definitely be looking at, right? They're very good defensively. They will go and score goals, and they've got really good value options as well. So keep an eye out on Semedo's price. I'm very interested in him. Obviously, Vinagre, he could be back in now. It depends on how long Marçal is out for. But Marçal did walk off the pitch. It wasn't like he was stretched off or anything like that. So we'll have to wait and see what Nuno says about how long he is going to be back. Gareth Bale's coming at 9.5 million. A lot of people are asking me if he's an option. First of all, I don't think he's even fit to start yet, so we're going to have to wait and see when he actually starts. Obviously, the aim of FPL is to get players in before they start scoring points because you want to be ahead of the curve. But for Gareth Bale, I feel like it's someone that I'm going to have to just wait and see on. He's 0.5 million more than Son, so straight away I'm wondering, do I even need to spend that? We know what we're getting with Son. Over the last kind of 3-4 seasons, he's scored plenty of points, plenty of goals, plenty of assists when he's had minutes in the team, of which he is basically nailed on at this point. Gareth Bale's been injury prone. Last year, he didn't really play too many matches for Real Madrid. We know he's a great player. We know he's been a brilliant player. Like, if it was Gareth Bale of kind of 5-6 years ago, he would be straight in my team. But he's 31 now. There's nothing to say that he will come and hit the ground running. He might do. And if you've got that faith in him, then yeah, 9.5 million could be a bargain. A bit like Son, he's a bit of a greedy player. He's going to shoot on sight when he can. And that's great for FPL. So I'm definitely looking at him, but he's not someone I'd want to rush in to go. And I think 9.5 is probably a fair enough price, just because of the reputation that he comes with. But as soon as you price him a little bit more than Son, I'm thinking to myself, well, but I might just get Son then instead if I really want a Spurs attacker. So 9.5 could be good, given how good he has been, but can he keep being that good? We'll have to wait and see. In terms of Chelsea players, I cannot believe so many people are selling Werner. He's probably going to drop in price this week, which is incredible. If you're on a wild card, then fair enough, okay? That's a little bit different. Maybe you get rid of him. I do think he's one of the headaches, by the way, if you're wild carding this week. Because long term, if he blanks again, you're going to want to get rid of him. But you're on a wild card, so you don't want to book in a transfer. But you also don't want to be without him for West Brom. Very tricky situation. I do think for Chelsea, they're going to be a great team this year when all their players are fit and when they've had a bit of time to play together. Probably overlooked how long Ziyech and Pulisic might be out for. If either of those is back this week, it could be good for Chelsea. And it's very hard to know how they're going to play because they had a Brighton game where Brighton really took it to them, did really well. And then 10 men for 45 minutes against Liverpool. I mean, that Liverpool game, what could you make of that anyway? So West Brom, I don't think I'd be getting rid of any of my Chelsea players. Even if I had Havertz, I'd probably hold on to him. If I was on a wild card, I wouldn't go near Havertz now, I don't think. I think I'd just get rid and then have a look where he plays when everyone's fit. And Werner and Reece James are really the two key players. Reece James, the fact that he's played the first 2 opening games is brilliant because Azpilicueta has been fit, ready to play, and he hasn't. I really thought, if anything, that Azpilicueta would come in for Alonso in that Liverpool game. That didn't happen either. So it could be Reece James and Chilwell, the full-time fullbacks, which they might get rotated and rested at some point. But if Reece James is going to play 5.1 million, I want him in my team. He's so attacking, and as soon as they replace Kepa, it looks like this Mendy goalkeeper could be in soon. Is it going to be this week or not? I don't know. But you'd think he's going to go straight into the team once he's signed for Chelsea. So I think maybe people like me probably jumped on them a little bit too early. I do think it's harsh on Werner because that Brighton game, okay, didn't go his way. And then Liverpool was going to be a tough one anyway. So let's see. I mean, he's a great player, just hasn't really, hasn't really dropped for him yet, like a good amount of points, and the chances as well as the chances being created by other Chelsea players in that team too. But West Brom, how are people getting rid of him before that? I don't know. That could be a big score, and then it's Palace at home, Southampton at home after that. So if Ziyech and Pulisic, one of the two or both, are back, could be looking great for Chelsea. Okay, so let's quickly talk about captaincy. I feel like the best captains come from these 4 fixtures. So West Brom versus Chelsea, Chelsea of course, Spurs versus Newcastle, Man City versus Leicester, and Liverpool versus Arsenal. Man United versus Brighton, although I wouldn't necessarily sell them, I don't think I would trust them with the captaincy this week. Palace versus Everton, again, Palace have done okay so far. So I wouldn't want to necessarily captain my Everton players, even though they're doing incredible, by the way. And West Ham versus Wolves, like I said, Podence and Jimenez, great options for our squads, but not really captaincy material for me. So I'm looking at these. Now, straight away, let's talk about Salah versus Arsenal, or Mane versus Arsenal. Because a lot of people will say, it's Arsenal, you can't do that. And to be fair, Arsenal have had very good results against the top 6 under Arteta so far. The traditional top 6, right? But the numbers haven't looked that good. And they're still not looking that good, by the way. Yes, they did quite well in game week 1, but that was Fulham without Mitrovic. In game week 2, West Ham really took it to them. Like, I think Antonio on his own had something like 1.5 XG or more. So teams are getting chances against Arsenal. And they have been before Arteta, they have been after Arteta. Just because the results haven't necessarily gone that way doesn't mean that that can't happen. So I actually think that Salah and Mane are really good captaincy options this week. Especially with Thiago in the team as well. I think he's really going to help just pass Arsenal off the pitch potentially. Now, of course, Arteta has come in and changed a lot of things, and they have done quite well under him. But I don't know if they've done so well that we shouldn't consider. Like last year, if I'd said, maybe before Arteta, if I said I'm not captaining Salah because he's playing Arsenal, people would laugh at me. So how much of an improvement he has made, Arteta that is, will depend on whether you think this is a good captaincy option or not. And I do think there's a lot of captaincy options this week, but I don't think there's necessarily a standout. So for me, I might just go for Salah because the stats are always there. He's got penalties. And I do think Arsenal maybe been a little bit lucky at times with the results they've got against the top 6. Man City versus Leicester, how good Man City looked against Wolves really tempts me to go for someone like Kevin De Bruyne or Sterling. They should get plenty of chances. Obviously, penalties always there for De Bruyne as well. Like Jamie Vardy, I mean, I think he's had like 3 touches in the box or 3 shots in the box or something like that so far. Really poor, really relying on penalties at this point, so definitely wouldn't go there. But Man City looked extremely good. The only thing with Leicester is, because I know they just conceded a couple versus Burnley, Johnny Evans is back now. That's going to be a real boost to that back line. And that means indeed he can either play in the back 3 or he can go back into midfield. Obviously, he can drop back and play in the 3 at times. But indeed, going back to midfield would be quite a big win. So that's the only thing that would put me off maybe captaining a Man City player. But again, if there's no standouts, maybe you just jump to the team that are going to score the most goals over this season, which is almost certainly Man City. So Sterling could be an option on that right-hand side, obviously up against Castagna. Or that left side for him, obviously right side for Castagna, and then De Bruyne as well. Like De Bruyne playing that number 10 position, which people have now made out like that's going to be his new position. But he did play that kind of role, not necessarily a full-on 10, but being able to go more advanced in tougher games, because they did play 2 holding midfielders. That could happen again against Leicester. They could play another 2 holding midfielders, Rodri and Fernandinho, whoever it is. And then bam, De Bruyne's getting licensed to go forward more, dictating the play, and honestly, just looking incredible he was against Wolves. So De Bruyne could be a really good option, potentially a little bit better than Salah this week, but I do think it's quite close. Spurs versus Newcastle. Again, this is quite a knee-jerk decision because I don't feel like most people were thinking of this before, Kane got, 5 attacking returns and Son got 4. That doesn't mean you shouldn't change your opinion. I do think Newcastle's a good fixture. I don't think they're going to let Son in behind quite as many times as Southampton did. Like, Southampton played such a high line and then just didn't change it when Son kept getting through. So it's pretty ridiculous decision, to be fair. So Newcastle's a good fixture. I think if you want to, if you think the form is going to continue for those two, then they're good options. But I do think De Bruyne and Salah and Mane would probably be higher for me. I don't think Newcastle are going to give them such an easy game, but confidence will be high. Bale could be in there at some point, make an appearance. There could be goals there as well. So I like both Kane and Son. I mean, Kane got a lot of assists in that Southampton game. Maybe that's a sign of things to come as they switch towards a more 4-3-3. He might drop back a bit, as we've seen plenty of times before, and more take up basically a distribution role instead, which is not bad for the team. Obviously, for FPL points, you want those goals ahead of the assists. Although when he gets 5 returns, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I like both those options. And Chelsea versus West Brom. I don't think Werner is a bad captain this week. The only thing that would put me off is we haven't seen enough from them so far. And like I said, there is circumstances around that. Havertz playing right in the first game, 10 men against Liverpool, plus it was Liverpool anyway. So we haven't really seen enough to yet decide whether Werner is a bad option. So I do feel like this is a good captaincy because of the fixture, but I feel like that's what you're kind of relying on. You're relying on what he's done in past seasons, which, by the way, is very, very good outside of the league and outside of Chelsea, plus West Brom. So it's a bit of a punt. I don't really see a big reason to not do it other than he hasn't scored yet. But at some point, he is going to score. So for me, there's no standouts, I don't think, this week. I think there's quite a few very good options. In my team right now, I have a Liverpool player, a Man City player. I don't have Spurs, and I have Werner, Salah, De Bruyne, and I'm currently thinking of going Salah. Werner's actually my last choice, I think. As it stands, that could change, but let me know in the comments below who you're captaining this week. That's it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give it a like. Really helpful, and I love all the support that I've had, both pre-season and now the season has started as well. Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think about what I've said. Do you disagree with the Salah captaincy against Arsenal? I know a lot of people think that Arsenal are much better defensively now under Arteta. So do you think it's a mistake to captain Salah this week? If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button as well. Please do hit the notification bell. You know when all my videos are going up. It's completely free to do, so you might as well just get it done. Know when the live streams are going up. Know when the videos are going up. Job done. And lastly, big shout out to all the patrons that have signed up to there on patreon.com/letstalkfpl. Everybody gets their name on the wall once they sign up, and obviously get a shout out on the first video as well after they've signed up. So we've got so many patrons now, I've had to create a 4th wall. So thanks very much to Nissan TS, Dylan B and Tom P, who have all signed up since the last video. If you want to check it out as well, there's a link in the description below, patreon.com/letstalkfpl. There's loads of stuff there, WhatsApp, Slack access, extra content, shout outs, team reveals, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to check it out, click that link in the description below. Otherwise, I will leave it there. I'll be back with a wildcard video tomorrow. Thanks very much for watching. See you soon.